So I think we're ready to go. Right on time here. Welcome everybody. We are talking about puppies. Yay!
Mhm.
There's nothing
Yeah.
better than puppies. We have Sarah Baker here, and she's got Skeptic there in her lap.
Hello.
Hi,
Little puppy.
Skeptic. Exactly. And so we are here to talk about puppies and young dogs, and really any dog that's just starting out in agility. There's a lot of crossover there.
Absolutely.
All right. So, ready to get started?
I am ready.
Okay. I'm going to let you take it away because this is your cartoon here that you found and loved.
Yeah, I like this one. And this is an old Peanuts cartoon. Charles Schulz, of course, the creator of Peanuts. And he says, happiness is a warm puppy. I just really like that. I think right now we're kind of in a difficult time with the pandemic. It's really changed the dog world. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. And I was a little surprised to learn that a lot of people are still getting puppies. You know, a lot of people had plans in the works to
Yeah.
get puppies, litters that they've been looking at for a long time, and they went ahead and went through with that. But even in the non-dog sports world, there has been an increased interest in getting a dog. So
People
just
are
in
home,
families,
they
people are
can
home.
take care of it.
Their kids are asking, and their kids aren't going to school, and maybe they can spend a little more time with the dog.
Yes.
I'm not sure what's triggering this, but it seems like this is a real thing. So at least here in the United States, there's certainly been an uptick in the interest in dog training and puppies specifically. So we thought, hey, good timing. I think the last time we did a presentation on puppies was somewhere around this time last year.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah, so a lot's
Yeah.
changed, but people still getting puppies. And so I know that a lot of people here today are interested because they are getting a puppy, they're thinking about a puppy, or they just got a puppy.
That's right. I've been seeing them on Facebook. Tim here says his is 11 weeks old.
Oh, that's
Oh.
adorable.
Tell
It's
us
like
what
the best
kind,
age.
Tim. All right. So just quick note here about the team. So this is the Bad Dog Agility team here. We have a photo of Esteban, who is right here next to me in real life, and the one guy in the photo. Sarah Baker is there in the middle of the photo, and she's also here in real life in the purple shirt. Jennifer
Yes.
Crank, of course, is our other team member who is podcast co-host and instructor at Bad Dog Agility Academy. And then there's myself, Sarah Fernandez-Lopez. And anytime we talk with Sarah, we have to put in this slide to remind people that there are two Sarahs here because every once in a while, I'll run into somebody who thought that we were the same person, that maybe Baker was my maiden name and Fernandez-Lopez is my married name. So this is we're both in the same place at the same time shot to prove that we are two different people here. But yes, I am married to Esteban. Sarah Baker is not. Sarah Baker is a 3-time national agility champion. I sadly am not. But there you have the entire team here and the two. And speaking of national agility champion, this is a picture of Sarah Baker and Hops after their 3rd win of AKC Nationals. But Hops is the dog that she has won nationals with 3 times, but she also has Skeptic, who, well, now he's making a name. He's already made a name for himself. And here he is as a little puppy. And
He was so cute.
that's right. And then here he is, all grown up and on the podium at the European Open trials, I believe this picture is from. Is that right?
At 2.
At two. So and
Great.
now we have a little bit of the sadness of the pandemic again, because he made the European Open team, and of course European Open was canceled this year. So this summer would have been his international debut. And of course, that's not happening now, but he is very young. And so we expect to see a lot of amazing things from him going forward.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about Skeptic, but before you give us the inside scoop and information, I think it's so important that she has Skeptic as opposed to, say, a Border Collie or a Sheltie. it matters because Skeptic was a difficult puppy, and Sarah's going to elaborate a little bit on that. And we know that pain because we got two puppies at the same time. We have a golden, she's 14 months now, and a poodle, 15 months old. And our poodle is probably more like Skeptic. The golden, of course, is perfect and wonderful, and
As Goldens are prone to be.
yeah, she's really tremendous. We've given them both a lot of love and support, and they've turned out very differently just based on their personalities and their predispositions. And so one thing that has really impressed me and given me a lot of hope, frankly, in raising this poodle, is that Skeptic was a little bit of a difficult dog. And so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, and it was probably especially difficult coming after Hops, who was a very smart, biddable, focused border collie who I never really had to work, ask him to work with me. But this little guy was much more interested in sniffing and birds and eating everything that he could fit in his mouth versus working for me. So we had to do so many things that I didn't have to do with other dogs. I had to work on creating a relationship, on getting focus, on really proofing distractions. I had to teach him not to run into walls. I had to teach him to pick up his feet going up steps. Dude, don't run through the steps. It's like, there's just so many things about him.
Right. Some dogs are just in a hurry to get to places, but these are the kind of learning experiences that we have as trainers, where you have that one dog who kind of requires a little bit extra, and it makes you better because it turns out there's a lot of people out there who have a dog like that or has some of those characteristics, and you're able to help those people.
Yeah, he taught me I was teaching stays wrong. So he has taught me many things.
These puppies are good teachers.
Yes.
And Skeptic is also the star of Sarah Baker's Agility Foundation for Puppies and Young Dogs online course, which runs through our academy, where she basically chronicled all of the training that she did with Skeptic in his first 6 months. So that course is always available for registration. So anybody that has puppies or is getting a puppy, whenever it's the right time for you, that course is there and available to register.
Yes.
One person did email ahead of time. They said their puppy, in quotes, their puppy is 15 months old now. Is it too late to benefit from the information in this particular live or in the idea of puppy training? Did they miss the window of opportunity to get things right from the start? And I wanted to put this at the beginning so that anybody else that's in the same boat, they feel like their puppy is kind of not so much a puppy anymore, but they aren't quite where they need to be for competing, could get that answer up front. So what do you say, Sarah?
Well, that's an easy answer. It is never too late. It can be easier the earlier, but it's definitely never too late. My first two agility dogs did not start as puppies. They started as young adults. So, and if I was going to get a rescue or start with an older puppy or an adult dog, I would just start from scratch. I would treat them like a puppy, and I would just teach them all the foundation and go from there. And I often have to go back with dogs who are in classes, and there's holes that will appear, and we just go back to foundation, and then we're able to fix the skill and build it back in. So it is definitely not too late to start.
And Sarah has a lot of experience here with puppies. One thing that I found fascinating about Sarah Baker myself was, we became familiar with her and friends with her through agility. We knew her as, a national champion, a national agility champion, somebody who was really, really good at the sport of agility. But then once we got to know her, we discovered that before she did agility, she used to train service dogs. So you have raised many, many dogs, and you've raised a kind of dog where these skills are really, really important.
Yes.
All right, so we are going to get into what is really important for your dog. So everybody out there, you have a puppy, you have a young dog, you have a new dog. What should your goals be for puppies and beginner dogs?
And I think this is a good time to pause and let everybody type in their answer. What do you think is the most important skill or trait or behavior or obstacle? What do you think? Like, what's the most important thing for your puppy? There's going to be like a 30-second delay here. So go ahead and start typing that in, and when the answers start rolling in, we'll call out some of them.
Are you go ahead?
Yeah,
You're gonna show them the answer? They're
I mean,
typing. They won't
yeah,
see
yeah,
it
yeah.
for a few seconds
Yeah,
anyway.
everybody type. Everybody type.
All right. So Sarah, this is your big goal. Sarah's big goal is confidence in you and the world.
So Sarah, tell us a little bit about confidence. Why is it so important? Why is it a big goal? What's the big deal here?
Well, if I have a confident dog, it's going to be much easier to get the dog to be able to work in challenging environments and at a trial. A lot of the time, things fall apart when we don't have confidence in the skill, we don't have confidence with other dogs and people around. It's difficult if I go somewhere to train and my dog is unsure about the environment. So confidence will really help me with focus and with the long-term goal, and having the dog be able to be happy and want to work.
Right. That's such a great point. Let's take a look at some of the answers that are coming in here. And these are all great answers, by the way. Potty training and crate training. So we have very practical answers. Focus, two multiple votes for focus. A third one for focus, connection, attention, trust, any kind of training, relationship, socialization. I think a lot of these things you see are adjacent to confidence and building confidence in your dog.
Yes.
Building trust, being happy, impulse control, another vote for relationship. Someone says confidence. I wonder if they knew that slide was coming. Another vote for confidence, socialization, relationship, recall, fun, focus, how to learn, connection, confidence, relationship. So everyone here is really focused on a couple of common things, and I think they all very clearly relate to confidence. But I will tell you a little bit about our poodle, and having just heard Sarah Baker talk about skeptic, our poodle is great with focus and attention and relationship and trust and all those things, except when she's not. Right? Because when there's a dog barking on the other side of the fence, when you take her to a new place, suddenly we have a real loss in confidence, right? And when the confidence goes away, you see a lot of these other things go away, and suddenly the ability to do agility just vanishes, right? Highly trained, complex behaviors. A lot of you have probably experienced this with other dogs, not your puppies, that your dog can weave at home and in class, and you take them to a funny place, or there's a weird teeter nearby or something, it bangs and they're going through the weaves and suddenly they can't weave. There's a loss of confidence, and it affects everything that the dog is able to do in agility. So I kind of like this big goal picture here about confidence, because it kind of allows all the other things that everybody has mentioned and is right to mention. It allows all those things to flourish. But without confidence, a lot of those things can dry up, right?
So that is the big goal, but we have a lot of other goals for our puppies, and we have for you guys a checklist that Sarah Baker has put together. It's a checklist for the first 6 months, and you can get that. You don't have to write all these down. We're going to go through these. I think there's 16. I'm pulling that out of my brain. So around 16 different behaviors that Sarah's looking for in her puppies by the time they're 6 months old. And you don't have to write them all down, because you can get them here at baddogagility.com/puppy-checklist. And we will email that out to you guys at some point, or put it in the comments or something like that. But you can get this download by going there. And what we have done is we've taken this checklist that Sarah put together, and in looking at it, I realized that there were some themes, and they aren't all agility, right? So the first theme that we have are goals that revolve around their training goals. So things like being able to focus on training in distracting environments. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about these five. We have 5 training goals here, and why these are so important for you and your puppy.
Well, I find with so many dogs that when something falls apart, it comes down to a foundation thing. And a lot of the time it is proofing. So your dog can weave in the backyard, but can they weave if a bird flies past? Can they weave if someone's staring at them? And so being able to just work with a puppy on, can you sit with another dog running past you? Can you play tug with me in the park? Then you'll be able to do those agility behaviors later when you have those distractions. So I think that's a super big foundation for agility, is being able to focus and do what you ask them to do, even when other things are going on.
Right. And we have learning shaping behaviors. It's a pithy saying, but it's so true that dogs have to learn how to learn.
Absolutely. And I remember when I moved in with my husband, Jeremiah, he had a rescue dog, Dylan, and I was training him to do agility. And to start with, he didn't even know that his behavior had a consequence. So he first had to connect that he did something and that earned a reward. He had to learn that his behaviors earned him things. Once he learned that, it was so much easier to teach him things because he was kind of in control situation. And then so many agility behaviors are complicated. That if the dog can only do things with luring, some behaviors just can get impossible to learn. So I need the dog to be able to think and offer me behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as playing with you everywhere, someone in the chat mentioned that now with the pandemic, it's actually hard to take your dog to all kind of different places. A lot of us are basically
Yes.
stay at home.
Mhm.
And so, we have some thoughts about that, but what are your thoughts on trying to socialize your dog? Although we'll probably talk about that a little bit later, I think, as well. But let's go ahead and address this right now. Like, what would you recommend to someone who's got a puppy and they're looking for new places?
Well, it would be just like when I first got him, and he only had one set of shots, and I didn't want to be taking him everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time when I was working on generalizing behaviors or proofing them, I would go to another place in the house. I would bring in another dog and give that dog a food toy and then train this dog. I would put an X pen around the front door and work outside the front door
Mm-hmm.
with him in the X pen. So I would try to create distractions and different environments within my environment.
Yeah, this is brilliant. And I think this is the answer to a lot of people's questions around this. And I think trainers just in general are not very good at this, right? You have one place, it's probably your yard, where you do all of your outdoor training and agility. And there's probably one place, either there's a special room that you guys have, an open space in the living room. Maybe for us, it's the garage. We put down some artificial turf there. And so the dogs know to kind of run to the garage. But what about working in the hallway? What about working, in the bathroom? What about working in each of your bedrooms? What about doing something in the kitchen when there are meals going on? The laundry
Sometimes
room.
just putting a bowl of food on the ground and then working
Yeah.
just
And so
completely messes with the dog's mind and they can't work anymore.
that's right. So once you teach a dog to sit, you have not taught that dog to sit until that dog is sitting in 30 different places all around your house, indoor, outdoor, side yard, front yard, backyard,
Yeah.
sidewalk, every door. Exactly. And so I think that's something I understand that you're everywhere now probably doesn't include Home Depot and the
Yes.
outdoor restaurant patio with lots of people around. I understand that that's gone away, but there's still a lot of everywhere that everybody has available to them. You just want to be a little creative, I think, about it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Put
talk a
on
little bit.
costumes
Yeah.
for puppies.
Yeah, we do that too. We do that too. And I think, so for people out there who've never done that, yeah, put on a hat, see what your dog does with that.
Or a mask.
That's a tough one.
No, I mean, like, we all need to be, all of our dogs need to be
A mask.
Yes.
That's such a great point. Especially if you're going to run agility in a mask. I know that some trials are opening up in some places. I know from experience because I ran with an N95 mask at the last 3 agility nationals. That was to keep dirt and stuff out of my lungs at that time. And of course now you can't even get those masks. But I'd wear them all day. They're not very comfortable. They leave lines in your skin. They'd rub my skin raw at the end of 3 days at nationals. And I did have to practice it with it. But one thing I definitely did, I had several sessions with Gitchy, both at a local trial, but also practice in my backyard where she's most comfortable because they can't see your mouth. And so the dogs take an enormous amount of cues from your breathing, from your mouth, the way it moves, the facial expressions that you make. And so all of those are changed when you're wearing a mask. So with a puppy, go ahead, whatever mask that you have, make sure that you're mixing in a little bit of mask training. So when you do go outside to new places or you're out in the front yard and whatnot, it's not one more thing that really freaks your puppy out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So introduce the mask early when they're
Yeah.
nice and comfortable. This one is so interesting. I do want to talk about this one. You have here, build equal value for food, toys, agility equipment, and you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's good to have a variety of rewards. So poor Skeptic, he's my first small dog, and I've made him sick twice now by giving him too much food. He's apparently not a Labrador in the amount of food that he can take.
Right.
So twice now I've caused him to puke, and poor puppy. So being able to use toys, which he can, sometimes I just get a little lazy and it can be easier to use food. If using toys gives me more ability to train because they can only eat so much. I've also had students say, well, I can't reward my dog. All they want is the next piece of equipment. And that makes training hard. So I want to be able to give my dog food, give my dog a toy, give my dog permission to do the next agility equipment, have them come to me and then tell them to do something, and have that all be equal, not have to fight them on it.
Right. I think a lot of people make the classic mistake of thinking, well, once the dog gets going and really develops a love for agility and doing tunnels and jumps and things like that, I've got it made. But you're going to find that it's actually a little bit more difficult to train. And, how we reward and reinforce our dogs kind of drives what they learn. And if you don't have a way to balance that a little bit, you're going to struggle. You're going to reach a point where you do struggle. All right. Also, we want our dogs to become fluent with a variety of verbal cues. And I think verbals are more important now than ever before in handling systems, right? It's trendy. Everybody has all these amazing verbals, one for left, one for right, one for left that's a sharper turn than the other one. You have a soft turn and a sharp turn, and there's just lots of different verbals going on in discrimination. So what are your thoughts on the trend in verbals today?
Well, the thought on the trend is with the international courses, they're getting more challenging and they're just becoming a little bit more necessary to be able to do some of the challenges well. Mm-hmm. So I think the verbals have a huge place in some of the new international handling, and the more information we can give the dog, the better. One of my favorite main things to do to students is to show them that their dogs don't know verbal cues.
Right.
And I do that all the time. My dog knows this, and I have them stand up straight, put their hands down or behind their back, and don't move, give a cue, and the dog can't do any verbal cues.
Yeah.
So, and then when we try to do a discrimination, or if we're falling behind and we're trying to rely on verbals, the dog doesn't know them.
Right.
So we're going to start with just things like sit, down, right, left, back. Can you listen and understand my word? Or do I have to say left, right, back, down? And if I have to move, then I just am limited on some of the things I can do on course.
Right. I think that's a great point. And the thing that jumps out at me is you said international. So I think people really need to understand that unless you're on that international track where you have a dog and you know that you want to compete overseas in Europe and on these international style courses, their verbal cues are going to be a little more useful to you, and it might be worth the investment of time and energy and effort to get really strong verbals beyond the ones that Sarah's listed, which kind of everybody can do, sit, down, stay, and whatnot. But if that's not your focus, I don't know that you necessarily need to spend that amount of time on verbals when it comes to things like handling. That's going to be a little further down the road for your puppies, but I want to point that out because it's not something to stress about, because Sarah's basically, with her experiment, she's showing people, hey, our agility handling systems are mostly very motion dependent, position dependent, and less verbal. Yeah. And those people are still very, very successful on those courses. And even on international courses, I'm going to tell you, I believe that the majority of those handlers are motion-based. It's just they have very good verbals in certain specific situations.
The words are supplemental. most of the time.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
help the dog know what your cues are saying. You know, rarely do I see pure verbals that dogs
Right.
really understand.
Right, right. But I do like your emphasis on it and kind of getting the dog used to that idea very early in their lives. Now let's talk a little bit about livability, and this is such a big one. I don't necessarily need a dog that's going to be great at agility, but I do need one that I can live with, and I think this is where a lot of people struggle.
Especially with agility dogs.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
kinds of dogs we get for agility.
I mean, we tend to get kind of high drive dogs. I don't know, Sarah, does that sound like anyone you know? You went out and got this high drive dog. Can you talk a little bit about all of these things here?
And the drive, like, the struggles I had with Hops were different than the struggles I had with Skeptic. It's like Hops is also high drive, but I didn't have to work on a recall. Like, I don't think hardly ever, because he always wanted to be right next to me working with me. But I did have to work with, you know, let's probably not chase the skateboard. Let's probably not attack the vacuum cleaner. You know, I had to work on some of those visual reactivities and definitely some fear things. Lots of fear things with Hops, which is another side of the arousal and reactivity, right? With Skeptic, he is also can be high drive, but he's also a hunter. Like, so while Hops wants to be here and herd me and do things with me, he wants to go sniff and chase birds.
Right. Oh, and what breed is Skeptic? For people who don't know and couldn't tell from the picture, what breed is Skeptic?
Well, in England, he is a working Cocker Spaniel, which is where he came from. And in the States, he's an English Cocker Spaniel. But Walkers are the nickname, working Cocker Spaniel.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. So recalls didn't come naturally to Skeptic. I had to spend a lot of time building in value for the recall, and then purposefully adding in distractions and improving distractions.
One thing you have on here that I want to address is you have finding confidence in being crated and left alone, because that's really important for agility people. Whenever trials get started again, whether we're crating out of our cars, whether we're all 6 feet apart from the next dog, our dogs are still going to spend a sizable amount of time at these events in their crates. So what is Skeptic like in their crate? And what can people do about dogs that really don't like being in their crate?
What he came with was you put him in a box and he screamed. He was a big screamer as a puppy. So we definitely had to spend quite a bit of time rewarding quiet. We would cover him if he did scream, because his scream was, I need attention, I want attention. So we would take the attention away, exit the room or cover the crate. When we were quiet, we'd raise it back up. He'd get tons of food, toys in there, lots and lots of treats. We played lots of crate games to build value for it. And then just over the months, he got better and better about being in the crates and being left.
Nice. Our poodle, a little bit similar, does not like being in the crate, and she makes some unusual noises of displeasure. And so it was very helpful to watch how you used food and canned food and spoons and things like that while you were working other dogs, that we could also do with the poodle to get her a little more used to the crate, which she can now tolerate, thankfully. Okay, let's move on to health and wellness goals. And I thought this was also kind of trendy. I think in the last several years, we've seen a real explosion in the understanding and research of canine health and fitness, and what a dramatic impact it can have on our dogs mentally and their performance on the agility course. And so there are 3 things here. You know, calmly accept body handling from you and others. These are husbandry type things, you know, clipping toenails and the like. For a poodle, there is a lot of grooming involved, just FYI. Emma's our first poodle. I was warned, and I was still completely unprepared for the amount of body handling and stuff required. But these are the first puppies we've ever had that we drummel their nails.
Yeah, that's totally because of you, Sarah. We've never drummeled. We've always clipped. And with these two puppies, I started it from the beginning.
They just roll over on their
and
backs.
They're both great at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Even a big golden. Discover body awareness and start developing a strong core. So I'm sure everybody has in their house somewhere one of those. What do you call them?
Like a fit disc.
Yeah,
kind
like
of
a
thing?
fitness ball or
Yeah.
fitness flat disc or something
Peanut
like
and
that. A
stuff.
peanut, right? Exactly. So can you tell us a little bit about what health and wellness has meant to you and Skeptic?
Oh, well, with the body handling and stuff, it's making sure that he can be examined by people safely and that we don't cause stress by everyday handling. Like when I first got him, if I tried to put a jacket on him, he would just all out try to attack me. That's not fun for him, not fun for me. So things like that needed to be taught. And now that's much, now I show him a jacket and he says, yay, we're putting a jacket on. Much happier for everybody, much less stressful. The body awareness stuff, the agility is hard. Agility is dangerous. So I want them to know every part of their body. I want them to be able to shift their weights. I've seen hops run down a dog walk ramp at full speed on 2 left feet.
Yeah.
And he just shifted his weight over, kept on going on those 2 feet. It's like, it's all good. Rice would have fallen off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so I want them to know where their feet are. And then the core and the strength is going to be, yes, I know that. And now I only have these 2 feet on the board. But now I also have the strength and the ability to just run on those 2 feet for 2 seconds, and then recover.
Yeah. Yeah. These are all great points. Some of these things you don't really think about. But in the last several years, we have slow motion now, Coach's Eye and other apps where people can watch their dogs run, and you see dogs make remarkable physical efforts to do crazy things, contorting their bodies to hit contacts and get into weave pulls and keep bars up, I think is a really big one. So conditioning and body awareness, really big, especially for those of you who have dogs that, they tick bars with their feet. They don't pick up their feet all the time, things like that. Yeah.
I think these are great things to work on at this point, when you have a young puppy too, because there's that period of time where you're kind of waiting. You're waiting for the right time to teach a lot of the other agility stuff, right? And this will pay you back. If you work on it now, if you work on this body awareness, it'll pay you back later. And so, your dog may be too young to do jumping or weave pulls or anything with impact, but you can start teaching them where all of their feet are.
And teach tricks. The more things you teach the dog, then it'll be easier to teach weave pulls. It's just yet another trick.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you're halfway there already. But some of the goals on your puppy checklist are very agility specific. And so I think probably some things you start very early on. I'm guessing, for example, possibly Skeptic following you around if you have food or a toy or something on you. But the idea of starting flat work for agility, which is, handling, and then basic training that's going to be age appropriate, wing wraps, a low table, tunnel, the bang game, and getting them comfortable with the plank. Can you talk a little bit about these things?
These things are all good, but they're also not necessary. If I have a puppy that's not super confident and super focused, I'm not going to work on that stuff. I'm going to work on the focus, the confidence, the impulse control. And then when I have all of that, then we can do this stuff. So this stuff is good, but again, it's not going to be like the all important thing. So if you have time and you have a puppy who's ready for this stuff, yep, I'll start the wing wraps. I'll start them. Most puppies can start chasing you around. But if I have a fearful dog, I'm not going to do a bang game, quite yet. So these are things that I definitely do try to do, but I'm not going to stress that I have to get them done while he's a puppy too.
Great point. And we know because our golden was definitely ready for these things much sooner than the poodle, but just for convenience, for the teeter work, like the golden probably could have started much sooner, but
yeah, I was doing them
at the same time.
Yeah, I was like setting it up and working, both puppies, like, session.
So you're definitely going to have to tailor it. And things like wing wraps, like you can teach your dog to walk around a cone and and swap that out and teach them to walk around a wing. That's a tongue twister. But, with shaping and a clicker and a treats, it's not like they're going to be tearing around these obstacles or really stressing their bodies. They're just going to kind of walk around it. And then later, months later, when they're much older, then their bodies are going to be different. And then you're going to, instead of using food, you're going to use a toy. And then you're going to get a different kind of drive and approach to wing wraps. So it's all wing wraps, but it's wing wraps that are very different and age appropriate. So definitely don't freak out about those kinds of things.
And Barbara asked what the Bang game is. So in like 13 seconds or less, tell us the Bang game.
Start with a very, very, very low teeter or board that moves, and I want the puppy hitting it and going, yay, it's moving, yay, it's banging.
Perfect. Yep, that's the Bang game.
All right. So next, we want to really think about agility as a career. When we're thinking about our Puppy Foundation, we're not just thinking about their first trial. What we're thinking about is all their trials over their entire lifespan. And how long of a career do we want to have? And I think the generic answer is, well, as long and as healthy as possible, right, of a career as possible. And we have to ask the question, how are dogs going to deal with the environment at a big agility trial, at any agility trial? And so part of your course, Sarah, you had put in a journal, and it's a very detailed, almost daily journal about Skeptic's life with photos and everything that he's working on. And, when I read through the journal, compared to all the dogs that I had before this golden retriever and this poodle, Skeptic, by comparison, had met many more dogs. Like you just emphasized that more, had met many more people, had training by others, right? Whereas I grew up in an era where no one was to touch each other's dog.
Don't touch my dog.
Don't touch my dog. You're going to ruin my dog. You're going to ruin my dog's stay. You're going to ruin their recall. Only me. I'm the only person they can like. I need to be the source of all their love and fun and goodness in life. Otherwise, I can't be successful at agility. We don't think that anymore. It's not true. Skeptic also visited more places. So I think that was a big difference. And so that's something we really looked at and took to heart for these two puppies. And fortunately, the bulk of their training, an entire year, all happened before the pandemic. We've already talked a little bit about restrictions that the pandemic has put on us as far as how we can do this for our own dogs. But I think that although someone raised a very good point, the dogs are very smart and they can kind of see through it. Yes, I think that's true. But there are also places that you can go. For example, most commonly it's going to be in your neighborhood, right? Where it's going to be far enough that it's going to look different. I'll be honest, we get 50 feet away from our garage and the dogs are like, this is a whole new universe. And the poodle's like, I'm terrified, right? It's very different to the dog. So I think that's a little bit dog specific. But you had a great story in there about an interaction that you had with Skeptic over a trash can. Do you remember that in your journal?
He was in preschool class. And they just had things out on the floor. And he was a little bit afraid of the trash can at first. And I think we just did some clicking and treating for investigating it. And then he was quickly in the trash can. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So that's something that we did. And even with the poodle, sometimes she would chafe at these really structured training sessions or shaping sessions. I would come in there with all my fancy toys or balls or targets that I wanted her to hit. And she'd be like, I'm not really interested in that, but I'm very interested in this sock over here or this, pencil on the floor. And I would just start clicking her for that and interaction for that. And it was a way for her to continue to learn. And anything that was spooky, she would check out, and I would support that. So it would kind of interrupt whatever you wanted to get done for that session. But in a way, it didn't, because we're really there for the puppy and their learning, and all that other stuff can kind of wait until next time. You kind of go where the dog is going to lead you. For everyone who's on the call right now, if you have questions, guys, go ahead and start putting them in now. We're going to address all of the questions at the end, but go ahead and start putting them in now. All right. So we come to another question.
Oh, Sarah, what is the best way to teach puppies not to bark while in a crate or watching other dogs run agility?
It's a combination of training and management of like most things. So it's going to be like, we'll take Skeptic as an example. I started with him in a crate in the living room, working with Hops doing sits. And when he was quiet and calm, when Hops was doing sits, Skeptic got cookies in the crate. And we slowly raised it up to being able to heel, to be able to tug. And then over the next year and a half, brought it up to being able to stay on a cot and watch his brother do agility and be quiet.
So it takes dedication.
It really did. And it's something that I really wanted to do with this dog. I want to just be able to put you here and not have to put you in the car. So now I can just have him stay on a cot and run Hops, and then have Hops stay on the cot and run Skeptic. And even though it took a lot of work, it's been really beneficial. And I would do, the same thing for watching other dogs do agility. We start at whatever distance and level we need to be successful. So maybe that dog is walking around on leash on the agility course, and you're feeding your dog for being quiet. And then you only raise the level of activity as your puppy can be successful. And then your management is when you can't train and keep your puppy under threshold, your puppy should leave. So that's when the puppy goes in the car, further away from the agility, so they don't get to rehearse the behavior you don't want.
I think that's so important. In fact, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is training tools. And the next slide after that is management, management versus
Yes.
training. And I think it's something that I have just heard you say so many times. So Sarah Baker does every other month, she does a Q&A for her course, and I'm on there manning all the text side, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've heard her talk about, well, you need management and training. And I think it's one of those things that we probably all do know or should know, but it's easy to overlook the need for both sides of these things. And I think that there's some people that haven't quite made that distinction in their head. And so they may be doing only management, not realizing that they aren't actually teaching the dog anything. I think there's also a group of people that feel like they need to teach the dog, and that management is not going to teach the dog, which is true, but you still need it to bridge that gap.
Yeah, not managing will untrain whatever you're trying to train.
Right. Exactly.
So it's not the management is going to train, it's the management is going to keep your training from being undone.
Right. It's like a refrigerator. Like it's going to keep it at that perfect, right where you left it, so it doesn't fall apart. And so, yeah, I think that's a really, that's something I think, especially with puppy training, almost for problem solving, almost everything that you run into, you should brainstorm, okay, what are my management solutions? How can I prevent this bad thing from happening? Or how can I create the thing that I want artificially? And then how can I teach the dog that's what I want from them?
And you practicing that now with your puppy skills, you can use that in agility. So on the course that I was playing with earlier in the backyard, there was an off-course tunnel. And usually he's pretty good at it, but he was taking the off-course tunnel. And at the moment I could manage it, or I could break it up and train it. And at that moment, I wanted to run the course. I didn't want to train. So I managed it. I trained my handling to help him be successful, even though that's not the handling that I want to do to be able to get that behavior. But in the moment, like, I don't want to train it. I just want to get it and continue on. Mm-hmm. So I managed it. But now I know I need to go back and train it if I don't want to continue managing it.
That's a fantastic analogy, because I have talked about that on podcasts, and I never had really thought of it like that. I hadn't really thought of it in the same way as a crate manages a puppy. But absolutely, I have talked many times about, like, here's what you can do in the moment for this handling things, but then here's what you need to go back and train. You're absolutely right. That comes right back down to management versus training. Awesome.
It's
Next slide.
nice when it ties together.
I know, right? It all comes together.
Yeah.
All right, so we're about to get to Q&A, just a summary here of the ideal puppy traits that we're looking for, that we want a dog that learns quickly, is focused, curious, and bold, calm indoors, driven in the field. That's the dream right there.
He's getting calmer outdoors.
Right. Sometimes they just have to grow up a little too. Ours are getting a little bit more calm indoors. Well socialized to dogs, people, and environments, good with husbandry.
Mm-hmm.
And as we had mentioned before, everything, this entire checklist, if you want to see exactly what Sarah did with Skeptic, she does have this online course, Agility Foundations for Puppies and Young Dogs, and you can get that at baddogagility.com/puppy. And that has, I think, 6.5 hours of video of the different training that you did, things that went well, places where you had to problem solve, kind of the good and the bad in there, plus a whole diary of everything that she did with Skeptic.
Yeah, lots of first sessions. So you're not looking at highly polished behaviors and things that are not realistic for you and your dog. You're going to actually see the process. So I appreciated that. I found that very helpful as a trainer.
And we do have a couple of questions that were emailed, so they get first priority here. One person asked, at what age can you start using each piece of equipment? Are there any balance, coordination, fitness exercises for puppies?
So I'm going to take the second one first.
Sure.
The balance, coordination, fitness. I start with just like stand, sit, down, just like flat work, right? Being able to hold yourself in a standing position, being able to sit without flopping all over. So we'll start with just very basic strengthening exercises like that. Mm-hmm. Then we'll do things, stepping over something, stepping on something, eventually work to an unbalanced disc. And a lot of that just depends on the puppy. Some puppies, Skeptic came pretty strong. Like he explored, I had a disc on the ground for hops and he went on it and he was stable. A lot of puppies are on it at first all wobbly. So a lot of it will depend. But so start on the flat, make sure that they're strong and confident, and then slowly build things into more unstable surfaces and more difficult things. Mm-hmm. And then using each piece of equipment for the high impact things, repetitive jumping, especially full height, lead pulls, your full size A-frame and stuff, full teeter banging. I'm going to have my dog be completely done growing and mentally mature enough to be able to learn the whole behavior right away. I don't want my puppy to run through channels for 4 months with them open. I want to be able to train them in 2 weeks to week. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to wait until they are completely done growing. They're mentally mature enough to be able to learn this piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Some of the other. Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the other things that you do with the puppies will translate later, that they aren't actually agility behaviors, but if you've taught a dog to shape, right? If you've taught a dog to circle things, if you've taught a dog to get on things, to go through things, to go under things, like you're going to be in a good spot, and you don't need to be stressing out about the fact that you haven't started formal equipment yet.
Yeah, no. And some things I can do safely, like with Skeptic, he was confident. I could have him run up a teeter as a puppy and have the teeter be held up completely and get cookies and then pick them up and take them off. That's zero impact. Mm-hmm. And I taught it with enough management at first that I was confident he was not going to fall off.
Right.
But he didn't start actually banging that teeter until he was full grown.
Right. All righty. Next question. How do you know if you have moved forward too fast on an obstacle? So this person, their experience was with the teeter. She said every small change seemed to bother her dog, and it was kind of rough going. So how do you read your dog, I guess, in the training progression?
So looking at just like your numbers, I'm looking for an 80-ish% success rate before moving on, but you need to know all your criteria. So take the teeter, for example. Your dog may have been doing it, but they did it fearfully.
Right.
So now you said, okay, they did it. Check, we get to go on. But we now have this fear still attached. And so at each level, we're still going to have this fear that's going to hold us back and make things more difficult. So at step 1, we stay at that step until we're confident, we're fast, we're accurate. We really understand this behavior. This behavior is fun. I want to do it over and over again before I move on.
Yep. Yeah. And I will just say, like, from our own experience, it's rare that you have the dog that it's just every session is better than the last. The golden, in our family, the golden right now is the superstar. She is amazing. She's fast. She's driven. She does everything right. But every single time I change something, she has a bad session and then a good session. Like if every change that I made to the teeter, then the first session of that new change, she would be a little hesitant, but then the very next session, she'd be bam on it,
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned to, number one, to give her, multiple sessions at every step. So at least 2, right? At least to see the one where she like looks like she's amazing again. And then I also learned to not freak out when I got the dip in performance, whenever I made a change, and know that she just needs a session to be more comfortable again, and she will be back. So you just, every dog is different, and you will kind of learn their learning patterns.
Yeah, I think you're not always. Go ahead.
Less can be more with fear behaviors too.
Yeah.
So I see that with the teeter, like the dog will do this fantastic teeter, and then you ask them to do it again, they're like, oh boy, I just did that really hard thing and I have to do it again. And if you would have just stopped at the 1, it was great. But by asking them to do it again, it's harder. So knowing your dog and how they feel about equipment can be important too. Yeah. I do that just with hops with tricks. There's a trick that he really doesn't like. And so when he gets it right, I jackpot and we don't do it again. If I ask him to do it again, it gets worse.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's part of people, they keep progressing and they make it harder and harder and harder until, the dog reaches the breaking point.
Make it harder, easier.
Exactly. You got to reward them with an easier one. If you're working up to them tugging near a scary person, for example, and they can get about 10 feet, then on the next one, you don't want to go for 5 feet. You want to back up to 15 or 20, make it easier and say, hey, you did a great job. And now we can go relax or hang out by your crate or something. Okay.
Exactly.
I think that's all the advanced questions, right?
Yep.
So now we're going to go through it. And apparently we had a little bit of freezing right around the comments around the verbal. So the summary for the verbal discussion is, Sarah's doing some of the basic verbal discriminations, like sit down, that sort of thing. And we talked a little bit about handling and international handling being very demanding, where verbals for handling stuff is very critical. But if you're not going to be doing international stuff, you don't necessarily need to be doing it. Sarah Baker had a great discussion about how for her students, she takes away their ability to cue with the body and says, okay, cue the dog to do this just on the verbal alone. And they always fail. They can't do it. They're not as verbal as they thought. And so much of agility handling is very motion and position based. That's true of all handling systems, no matter how verbal you think you are. So even these international handlers that are so great are largely motion and position based. And then they have a key verbal in very specific situations, maybe to distinguish backsides from throttles, contact discriminations, things like that. Okay. Judy points out that she likes verbals for distance. That's a great use of verbals. Barbara wants to know about replays. So so there will be a replay. So if you are coming into this late, you can definitely go back and watch the first part. Dr. Ide says, not a peanut. Please, no peanuts, no peanuts. So Leslie is our sports medicine expert, and she just recently had a 14-day challenge. So that's pretty cool. So for those of you who are interested in like what your dog should be doing there, you can look her up, Leslie Ide. And you can tell us a little bit about Dr. Ide because you've done so much work with her and your own dogs, right?
Yeah, she helped rehab Hops from his shoulder injury. So it took him out for a good 8 months, and Leslie helped us so much, Dr. Ide. So we really, really appreciate her. And
Nice.
she's been there for us when he's had another minor injury. And so definitely it's a 14-day canine fitness challenge, I think is what the Facebook page is.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty
definitely go
awesome.
check it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the golden through that. It kept being earlier than I was waking up, so I would often miss it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. Okay.
There are plays on her page too.
Yeah, exactly. So Wayne says, can you please expand a little on impulse control? He's struggling with this with a 9-month-old Australian cattle dog. Yep. I assume ACD.
Yep.
Well, my main impulse control game is it's your choice. And I try to have the dog, I first teach them with food that if you control yourself, you may have this. And as they build more and more self-control, as I present the food, will make the game harder and harder. But I make it in everyday life too. They have to wait to go out the door. They have to wait to come out of the crates. And I'm not working on a cue. I don't tell them to stay when I open the door. I don't tell them to leave it when I drop the food on the ground. I'm training impulse control. It is your job to not run out that door when it opens. When the cookie falls, that's the cue to freeze and not eat the cookie. So that's a big piece that people miss is they teach a cue to stay, a cue to leave it, but the dog's impulse is to still dash out the door. The dog's impulse is to still grab the cookie that falls on the ground. So I try to teach self-control and impulse control for lots of everyday situations. And that can help in agility. Don't go grab that tunnel just because you see it.
All right. Lori asks, how can she correct her puppy from running to the fence, barking at people or other dogs during her training?
I would be starting with management.
I was just to say management. She's going to say management. I know it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that is the good starting point there.
And I had a similar situation with Skeptic, except the dog was Hops.
Right.
So Hops would be running around the yard barking, and Skeptic would want to leave me to go chase Hops, which is unacceptable because we were training, and unacceptable because Hops would not have appreciated that. So when Hops was loose, Skeptic was in an X-pen or on a leash until he got enough focus that I could trust him. And when he turned somewhere around 8 months, as a teenager, we kind of had to backslide a little bit and go back on leash for a couple things to really work those recalls again and that self-control and focus.
Mm-hmm. All right, next question. Leslie says, the puppy book she remembers reading said 7 weeks is the best time to choose the agility prospect from a litter. Do we agree? And Sarah, I'll let you go ahead and answer that first.
I haven't done all the research or the reading. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to pick any of my agility dogs.
Yeah. I think that's such a good thing to point out to people, because with a lot of the really great litters or high demand litters, the people who know the puppies the best typically are the breeders, because they're there with the puppies every day. So just let me think about myself this last 7 days. Like, I had days where I was really happy and excited and working out great, and I had other days where I was like, like, I'm at home again. Oh, my kids are driving me crazy. Oh, I don't feel like doing anything. And so, on one of those days, you might think, it'd be cool to hang out with that person. On another day, you're like, man, I don't want to be around that guy. And, puppies are kind of the same way. We've all had that experience where a dog looks fantastic one time you see them, and then you go back a week later and they look completely different. So the one who's going to know and have the most information about the dog's personality and potential and things like that is typically the breeder. So I think
and when when I trained service dogs, I did do temperament testing. We temperament tested litters.
Yeah.
But we would do it once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you didn't have just that bad day. We would do it at least twice to get a better idea, and at 2 slightly different ages. But yeah, I agree. Ask the breeder, and Hops was the only male, and I had agreed to only a male. Rice was I was his second home. Dylan, we were his second home. And Skeptic, I was going to play for another year for a girl, and the breeder said, you need to take this boy right now. And I said, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I think our golden was chosen for us as well. Kelly wants to know, what verbal cues do you typically recommend for American AKC trialing? Like, what are some pretty useful verbals to have as far as discriminations and the like?
Yeah, I mean, have your obstacle cues: jump, tunnel, frame,
Sure.
weave, display. I would definitely have a backside. You're going to see those sometimes just in masters. And it's frettles are becoming more and more popular. And if you want to do premiere, I would consider having a frettle cue as well. Oh, and a decel cue. Really nice to have like a check check or a dig dig or something that's a verbal to remind the dog to please add in a stride and do a tight turn. But
Okay.
yeah.
Tim notes that his breeder also picked out his English Cocker. And Anne wants to know, she's always heard that you should redirect your dog from an unwanted behavior. I guess if your dog's chewing on your shoelaces or something, to redirect them onto a toy. So that's something that you often hear. Is that the same as management, or are those two different concepts?
Yeah.
I feel like they're the same, right?
My bigger idea of management would be that shoelace was never available to begin with.
Ah, okay, yes. Yeah.
Right. So the behavior was never allowed to happen to begin with.
Okay, yes. I like that actually much better. So I think that is true management. Like, you're preventing the puppy from getting into a situation. Like, if your dog is dumping trash cans,
failed.
right, that you've already failed. Yeah, exactly. Like, how do I fix it? What do I do? You redirect. So I guess that would technically not be management. It would be like, you have a problem. You need it.
Yeah, or more like training. This is not what we do. This is what we do.
Right. And now you get to keep chewing this thing, and I'm not going to stop you.
But Anne, you're going to have a healthy amount of both of those things. You're going to do plenty of redirecting. You're going to do plenty of management. One is not right and one is not wrong. So you're going to
sometimes a little bit of bitter apple on a shoelace can go a long way.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Judy wants to know, did you say that you cover your puppy when he's barking in a crate and uncovered for being quiet?
Yeah, because his barking was a social demand barking. That was a way it was a punishment. You are barking at me, I remove me. I could have also left the room.
Yeah.
But it was easier in the moment to just put a blanket over the crate for a moment, and then when he was quiet, then we uncovered, and then if he remained quiet, then we rewarded. So if it was so that was in the home if I'm like working with Hops. At work, if I put him in the crate and covered the crate, it made things worse, because then he was socially isolated, and that's why he was barking at that point, because he's like, I am alone, I don't, and so if you isolated him more, it actually made things worse. So sometimes it's really understanding the motivation behind the behavior to help you understand how to solve it.
Yeah, great point. All right, and I think this is probably going to be our last question. We're just at a little over an hour here. Tim wants the secret. He wants to know how you train the puppy to get nails used to the Dremel.
Just little bits at a time. I teach my dogs a position to be upside down in my legs for feet grooming, and that leaves me with 2 free hands. And then I start with classical conditioning. We see it, yes, we treat. Clicker yes, and we get a treat. And then we turn it on, clicker yes, and get a treat. And then when it's off, we're going to work on touching the nails and classically conditioning. And then we're going to gradually have it on and touch, and just little bits at a time.
Yeah.
You know what I did? I thought this was rather clever, so I'm going to share.
Oh, okay.
I
get your pen and paper ready.
I know, that's right. This is the secret to my puppies. It just occurred to me one day. I just started brushing my teeth around the puppies because I have an electric toothbrush. And so I would just go and I would brush my teeth, and I thought, hey, it can't hurt, right? It can only hurt them with the noise.
Sure.
And so I would let them out to the bathroom in the morning, and then I would let them run around my feet while I brushed my teeth. And I thought, maybe that's why they're so good now. I don't know.
Tim, if you don't already have an electric toothbrush, I think you need one.
Not
that I heard that from other people, but purely a training thing. It's a dog training thing. All right, I think we've covered everyone's questions. For anyone who's watching this replay, go ahead and submit your questions as well. We do come behind and check all the comments, and so we will be answering questions as well. For those of you who are interested in learning more about Sarah Baker's puppy course that we personally found very helpful with our 2 puppies, where can they find it?
BadDogAgility.com/puppies.
Yeah, you go to our website Puppy, Puppy, and definitely check that out. And good luck to everyone who has gotten a puppy or will get a
Yeah.
puppy during this pandemic. You can do it. Some of the socialization is going to look a little bit different, but you just kind of want to have the big picture. Don't get bogged down in the details and the little things, which are important, but those are the things that can kind of drag you down and psych you out and make you think you're a terrible puppy raiser, and you're not, right? You're going to be just fine. And if you need any help,
Yes.
you know where to find us, and you know where to find Sarah Baker, and you know to check out her course. All right, that's it for tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us all. And Sarah Baker, thank you so much for joining us as well.